Interesting. The mention of grouse is it's a hot potato, I'm sure, in the
Yeah.
industry that you're in. I was on a grouse moor a couple of weeks ago. I think it's like
Mhm.
the 16th of August. Not shooting, the podcast not doing that well. I was just working the dogs. But the grouse moor in which I was on is very interesting. It was like an ecological desert, and this anonymous family bought it. And
Okay.
in about 3-4 years, they've spent £36 million on it, building houses, employing people, putting in roads. And it's a sporting estate through and through, but then they're building a larder and then a farm shop so
Mhm.
that all of the meat, which is harvested on the estate, can then be sold to the local public. And then they're building a pub on the inside. So far, they spent 36 million. They're going to spend probably the same again. And I just think, wow, and that wouldn't be there. That money wouldn't have come in if all of these sports had been banned. Or I know of another grouse moor about an hour away from where I live in Perthshire, and the guy spends £2 million a year on payroll alone. So that's keepers, housekeepers, groundsmen, etc. And I thought, oh my goodness, imagine if all of that money disappeared from that rural Scottish glen. It would just be a decimation.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you saw the spectacular grouse or banned grouse shooting debate in Westminster Hall a couple of months ago. And if you haven't,
I
and
thought
if
that you
you're
see Sunak's speech. It was pretty good.
yeah, it was superb. I had the misfortune or pleasure of sitting directly behind Chris Packham, and
Oh dear.
years of him never knowing, of course, but battling in the media with him and his often appalling narrative about our community. It was a really strange experience for me to sit so close to him and to be in his presence. It didn't change my mind whatsoever. But if your viewers and listeners haven't seen the highlights of that debate, you can find them quite easily on our website and social media. But that was an extraordinary afternoon. Now,
Could you
the
just give some context as to what was been
sure.
debated, what was said, etc.?
So there have been. This was the third debate triggered by a parliamentary petition, which gained over 100,000 signatures to ban driven grouse shooting. And Wild Justice, so, Ruth Tingey and Chris Packham had been pushing it on and off for years, and they went for round 3. I don't know what possessed them to do it. It was a genuinely, if I'm trying to come at this neutrally, it was a really big mistake for them because they've been beaten quite badly the first 2 times. The number of MPs who are willing to go and speak in favour of grouse shooting and its associated whaling management is immense, right? There's loads of them. Certainly in the last Parliament, but they went for it again in 2019. Oh, sorry, 2024. So it was, they got over 100,000 and it was accepted as a debate for the third time. But the reason I think they did it is because they thought, well, Labour's got a huge majority. A lot of the Conservatives who had been there previously are gone, and so this is our chance to really finally get them third time lucky. And actually, what they got, I thought that from our side of the fence, I thought they were going to do that. I knew we could mobilise some people cross party, but I thought that they would have the numbers, and what actually ended up happening was one anti-grouse shooting MP had turned up, Olivia Blake from Sheffield Hallam, who has been at least the last. I think she was at all 3, and she's definitely at the last one. So she was just wheeling out the same old boring arguments that we've already, dismantled. But what I don't think Chris Packham et al. And the League were there, all of those groups, RSPB was there. I genuinely think that they thought that it would be a walk in the park, and actually they were humiliated. I mean, actually humiliated. For the Prime Minister, the former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, who, all politics aside, he is a well-respected man. You know, he is. Most people don't dislike Rishi Sunak, be they Labour or they don't see him as a bad bloke. For him to stand up, he's not a very controversial person, put it that way. For him to stand up and effectively dress down Packham, because I was sat behind him, I could see it. Right, I could see the occasional glance as he was landing his blows in a really delicate, passionate, but strong way. And you could literally see Packham put his head in his hands. He could have just been rubbing his head, who knows? But I mean, it looked like his heads were in his hands, and they were shocked, they were stunned. MP after MP after MP, Conservative, Liberal Democrat. We had Labour. We had a Labour MP come out and defend grouse shooting and moorland management, and it showed that when you equip your allies with the facts, they are eloquently able to go in and dismantle the animal rights activists, because that's what they are, very easily, because they don't actually have many facts. They have a series of kind of jumbled bullet points, and they try and they're overly emotional. But in a chamber like that, it just doesn't work. It doesn't cut through in the same way. It's not picked up very well. So yeah, do watch that. But that was a really fascinating point. And the main thing that MPs were talking about was employment. There's no need to go in there and talk about how lovely it is to spend a day grouse shooting. I mean, most people don't care or aren't interested. What they are interested in, though, particularly as politicians, is rural employment. A lot of these MPs represent communities where, if it weren't for grouse shooting and associated moorland management, it would be pretty bleak. Not just ecologically, but economically. There are a lot of people, either directly or indirectly, that depend on a good shooting season and a successful grouse shooting season in the uplands. And hearing that, the arguments that we make all the time in the media and wherever we can, being read out by like Rishi Sunak and all the others, was really special. Added to that, just watching the complete and utter meltdown and annihilation of our opponents. If they think that they can do that again, a petition like that again, I mean, good luck. Okay, I would be highly surprised if they did. They actually helped grouse shooting. So thanks, Chris Backham and Ruth Tingu. Your complete lack of political and public antennae has helped further grouse shooting and the arguments that the Countryside Alliance makes.
I'm surprised the RSPB were there, because surely if you remove the grouse shooting and associated moorland management, then the amount of birds on the moor would just deteriorate rapidly. Like, without the pest control, without the controlled burning, all of the ground nesting birds would just disappear. And paradoxically, there would be less grouse, because there would not be the investment of trying to keep the population up and running. So that's a real surprise.
Yeah, it's not a surprise to me, because I have noticed over a long period of time that the RSPB, forgive me, becoming quite, if not already are, obsessed with shooting. They will use any excuse they can to try and stick the knife in when it comes to shooting. I mean, I before I joined the Countryside Alliance, I do come from the countryside, but I wouldn't say I was completely au fait with all the different groups and organisations. But I wouldn't have, you just said RSPB to me, I would have thought decent enough people, nice people. What's the problem? But being on the other side, I'm now like, oh gosh, they are quite obsessed ideologically, I think, with shooting. And it's really concerning, actually, because they are ignoring the same arguments that Chris Packham, etc., are ignoring. I'm not sure if he's still their vice president. I think he is, actually. Quite why you would, as a respected charity, have someone that has stood on a stage calling for people that bank, I think it was with Barclays, to stick their heads in a bucket of fire and set fire to it, and still keep them on you as your VP, is beyond me. But yeah, as I say, I wasn't surprised to see them